again, thank you so much, Dan and the RATPAC, for inviting me, but also making this whole series on Winlink possible. Winlink is a labor of love, as many of you know, and it's most definitely a team effort. So I'm really, really happy that Phil got us started last week. You'll hear K9ONR, John next week, and then me again, if you can stand it, talk about ICS forms in 2 weeks. And as I said, this is a labor of love, and we're going to go through this now step by step. And yes, I'm still unmuted. All right, what is Winlink? I'll let that sink in for a moment. Anybody want to tell me what that stands for? Email over radio? Okay, is that too much of a dad joke? Okay, fine. That really is
Oliver, there wasn't enough time to unmute.
Okay, fair enough. Trump was very critical of that, so we'll see. But I'll have to play this a little bit more. Okay, it's email over radio, so let's do that. As the next plan. Here's the plan for tonight. We'll give you a short intro. A couple of things that I think people should know. I'm assuming all of you have done Winlink at some point in your life. So we're actually going to give you a pretty high-level update on what's going on. And we'll talk about the standard library forms that have been updated. And this is just a small amount of the major updates we've done. I think the key ones, check in and check out. Winlink, did you feel it? The quick message and the after action review. It used to be the after action report. We're doing the after action review. And I also want to point out specialized forms. SODA and PODA spotter by W1LMS, the call sign lookup, and then we'll do a quick preview on cert forms. Any questions about the plan so far? All righty. Quick introductions. I'm Oliver, K6OLI, and I'm the forms manager for this fun thing. So I get to be the customer service kind of person and try to figure out, as Paul pointed out, what is it people are actually asking us to do when we help them with forms. And I also get to be the person who says no to quite a few forms, because we have relatively strict guidelines on what we add to the standard forms catalog, but we're very, very open to you adding your forms to, let's say, the website, especially if they're very specialized forms. And of course, Greg, KJ6SJT, is the brains behind the programming operation, and he does a fantastic job with that. I do want to say a big thank you to Greg, who has been going above and beyond, being really, 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 really creative. And of course, all of you met Phil, and Phil does the Winlink side of this with his tags. All of this comes together. And I do want to point out, forms are really what makes Winlink special in the world of agencies, in the world of amateur radio. You have the internet connection. That's a key part of it, but the forms are really what make it useful and usable. You can send messages on JS, JSA call and FT8 if you want to do short messages. You can do FLDigi, it's a great program if you want to broadcast and whatnot, but no other program in this space delivers the stability, the high number and quality of forms, as well as the modems and the interface that is very natural, as Winlink does. And I know some of you will think, well, it took me a while to learn. Like all good tools, it does take a little while to learn. I don't think anybody can master Winlink because there's so many moving parts all the time, but you can always learn. And the point there is not that we're becoming good at it, but better all the time. So keep that in mind. In emergency communications, we have very clear objectives. And in my mind, that is get the right information at the right time to the right people so they can make the right decisions. As volunteer radio operators, we're a conduit. We are replacing commercial and agency or radio systems or communication systems that may be inoperable for a short period of time. So that means we're kind of bridging that gap. That also means that when that gap occurs, our systems need to work. It doesn't do anybody any good if our systems go down with everybody else. So keep that in mind as we go forward. Some of you who have taken ICS training will recognize this. This is actually one of the FEMA, especially in public information, you run across that a lot. It's one of the FEMA objectives. And I find this is really encapsulates what we're trying to achieve here. So why use forms? Forms actually promote consistency in incident management. We could just send random messages, but they would be all over the place. And then whoever receives those has to then, as Paul pointed out, try to ask himself or herself, what is it they actually want? And then you have to ask the other side, clarify, and in our case, with the Medical Alert Center, the LA County EMS agency, they call that deconflicting. And there's a lot of deconflicting going on, even with forms. But understand that forms create much more consistency. It also lets you spot really quickly when something's off. They facilitate the effective use of mutual aid. One thing that we've noticed in California is it used to be that every county, sometimes every city had their own version of ICS forms, their own ICS 213s, their own. But they found that every time you have mutual aid, and in California you have that a lot because of the wildfires, because of earthquakes and other disasters, agencies help each other. Using the standard forms, even though they're not 100% perfect for your own agency, makes things work a lot smoother. So this is an example of an ICS 213, very typical of what we would use for, let's say, a resource request on an ICS 213. That's perfectly fine. Yes, there's a resource request ICS 213, but this one actually works really, really well. It improves the documentation of incidents. At the end of the incident, all the agencies, all the players want to get paid. Understand that you may not get paid as an amateur radio operator because you're volunteer, you're donating your time and effort and equipment, but the agency wants to get paid. So having proper documentation really facilitates that. And then, of course, it improves accountability. What happened when? Why did things go sideways? Or why did things work out really well? And of course, forms are a great training tool. And I'm very happy to say that my forays into incident management, event management, were largely helped by Winlink forms because they walk you through it step by step by step. This is how you can manage the incident. So please keep that in mind. Forms versus spreadsheets. I just want to point that out. There's some advantages to using spreadsheets, and there's some advantages to using forms. Whenever people ask us, can you make this into a form? Our first reaction is, well, let's see what it looks like in a spreadsheet. Let's get a sense of what works. It's much easier for us to work with a form that has been vetted and used for a long time than it is working with, well, I've got this idea. That's just really time intensive. And by the time they're like 100 times going back and forth from the Winlink forms team's perspective, it's getting kind of tedious after like the 16th, 17th emails going back and forth. And the other side sometimes feels the same way and just drops the whole project. Sometimes you do work with people who are really motivated, and then it's a lot of fun, and they do want to make these changes, so that's a positive. But okay, if a spreadsheet can fulfill the function of the form, use that. You know, try it for a while, and if you say, hey, listen, we need it in a smaller size, then the form makes a lot of sense. So there are a couple of advantages to forms. You have a web browser interface that is very commonly understood. Pretty much everybody uses a web browser. The XML is very small. The form fields can be made mandatory, so you can force people to fill in fields that they very often forget. And every time you forget a field that is required or mandatory and you don't fill it in, guess what happens? Deconfliction, right? The agency you send it to calls you up and says, okay, you need to fill this out and you need to send this back. We had an exercise here in 2019 with 17 resource requests, and they almost sank our VoiceNet because this constant back and forth with 38 other facilities listening and trying to send traffic. That was really, really tough. Forms make this really easy because they force you into good practices to begin with. And if there's a problem, you can just send the form in a minute without jamming up the voice channels. The output can be customized, like JSON, CSV, etc. We do that a lot with different forms. And of course, you can have mappable forms because of the form data. So we'll talk about that. There are a couple of disadvantages of forms. Let's talk about those. Winlink is needed to compose and view the HTML forms. That's absolutely clear. And field changes are difficult. So if you need to make changes while you're in the middle of an operation, in the middle of a deployment or disaster, that becomes very, very difficult unless you have somebody who has that kind of programming experience. So just keep that in mind. So there are a couple of advantages to spreadsheets. Like field changes are super easy. You just adjust the columns and boom, send out a copy to everybody in your group and say, now use version B or 1400 hours. Agencies already use spreadsheets. I'm willing to bet there isn't a single one of you who's working with an agency whose agency isn't heavily reliant on spreadsheets. That's just the way most of these things work now. There are disadvantages. They are larger in file size. They can be quite large. And hams are often unfamiliar with spreadsheets. Many hams have had very successful careers in their lives without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. So you need to work with them and get them familiarized. Very often I find it's very easy to tell people, hey, listen, if you can handle an ICOM 7300, a spreadsheet should be super easy, all right? However, in Winlink forms, you've got forms and spreadsheets working with one another. So this compatibility actually improves workflow. You can easily copy and paste information from a spreadsheet to a Winlink form. Like on top here, we've got the spreadsheet version of an ICS 205. You can see at the bottom here, we have the same information in the Winlink version, so we could distribute the Winlink version very easily. And what we used here is the paste channel data from a spreadsheet. So we just copied the information from up here, pasted it here, and parsed it into this. Works brilliantly. And of course, the reverse works too. You can export Winlink form information to CSVs in quite a few of our forms. A couple of examples are the ICS 205, 217, ICS 214 does that, the HICS 254, JPATs, and many, many more. And just to talk a little bit about the form to GIS map flow, because it's all kind of related, right? So you have the spreadsheet idea and you have the form idea. And within Winlink, this has kind of taken hold. So we do want to give you the maximum amount of options. You receive Winlink messages. And for those of you who are right now filling out your Winlink check-ins, right? We'll see what that looks like. You receive these messages. You can set it up so it feeds into a comma-separated values file right away without you doing anything, which gives you kind of this nice spreadsheet view. And from there, you can turn it into a map if you wanted to, right? Geographical Information Systems. That's what GIS stands for. You could also do other things. You can run analyses on your spreadsheets. You can run queries. You can do pivot tables for those of you who are familiar with spreadsheets. So there's a lot of information you can do. A lot of power in this. And just let me tell you this, the LA County EMS agency during the pandemic used spreadsheets extensively to manage its information flow. In addition to the software they're using, the software is called ReadyNet, but they use spreadsheets, especially for resource requests, because it made it much easier for them to filter who needs what, when, and kind of combine those orders. So that was really cool. Couple of form features that I think everybody needs to use more often. The setup button. You know, if you want to click your agency or group name, use that setup button. Almost all our forms now have a setup button. It makes it super easy, looks super cool. If you're at a hospital, you can put in the hospital name, you can put in your group name, kind of neat. And like we showed earlier, you can put in RATPAC for tonight, right? The nice thing about that is now you can filter for that as well. So if you have an incident or event with different groups, you can just display one group, not the other. You can highlight one group in one color and the others in another. So that makes life a lot easier. Form info. Almost all our forms have form info buttons. We're constantly updating those. They've gotten a lot better, more instructive, so use those very liberally. On the ICS 217, the form info even contains a link to a Google Sheet spreadsheet that you can use for ICS 217 and ICS 205. So you can actually start developing your own spreadsheets. Save and load. Please, after you filled out a form, you put in all that effort, click the save button. And here's why. You click that save button, you have a copy of that data on your computer. You then click submit. What happens is that you have your data in the message, and I don't know how often that happens to you. It happens to me quite often that I see something in the message. Oh, I messed up on that. And then I have to close it, delete that message, go back. But since I saved it, I can just load that text file and then make my correction, and it doesn't cost me any time. Copy from spreadsheet. We mentioned this already. You have in quite a few of our forms the paste channel data from a spreadsheet, super easy to use. And also, most of our spreadsheets, not all, but the vast majority of them now have tab delimited data. Why does that matter? Well, if you have tab delimited data, you can just copy the information from the message window. And guess what? Use the paste channel data and the paste button to actually drop it into a form, just straight up if you want to, or paste it into a spreadsheet. So again, this is kind of that integration. All right, let's talk about standard forms. Any questions so far? I think I killed Paul. I don't see him. All right, Winlink check in and check out. So we've had some we had a major rework of the Winlink check in, check out for a couple of reasons. One, the fields really didn't map the way we wanted them to. It didn't flow as well. So a lot of this was informed by the CSV. So we reordered and numbered the fields and output for better mapping. It actually makes mapping a whole lot easier. And you'll see that later when we do the live hands-on. We removed the net option. When we first did the beta testing for this, people were suggesting put the net option back in, and I thought at first they were joking. So I'm like, yeah, good one. But they actually meant that. I said, no. Get two options when you're checking in, an exercise or a real event. Because what are you checking? You're not checking into the Waldorf or story. Are you checking into a net? This is amateur radio, not something else. So exercise, real event, that's been working really well. We've got amateur and shares here as options. Of course, the band we reordered those. Some of you may have noticed as well the session. And again, we may add VARA satellite at some point in the future. Easy enough to do. We improved the filtering options. So organization, you can now filter by organization. So that makes it really, really easy to actually get even more meaningful views of your data. USGS, did you feel it? We have added floor information, not because we thought that was a cool thing to add, but because USGS finds this form extremely useful. And we would like to encourage all of you to play with that. And so now you can select which floor you were on during an event, an earthquake event. And USGS also added the earthquake early warning survey. And that's at the end. So you have this click to toggle the earthquake early warning survey on or off. I think this is more relevant for those of us living in earthquake country, but during shakeout, by all means, click it on and fill it out as if you had received, no matter where you live, as if you had received a earthquake early warning warning. And that makes it a lot of fun. Understand that none of the EEW survey information has any bearing on intensity. This is completely them trying to understand, are we serving the market we want to serve with earthquake early warning? So please try it out. It's a whole lot of fun. If you have any questions in there you don't agree with, just skip them. Same thing with a regular earthquake report. I do want to point out that October 19th is Shakeout. And no matter where you live in the US or in the world, please participate in Shakeout. We actually have a Winlink Shakeout website now, and we'll keep updating that. We'll start adding some videos pretty soon. And so you can scan the QR code that will take you to the website down there within easy to follow step-by-step instructions. And this information is extremely valuable. We're hoping this year that we're breaking 1,000. Last year was like 990 something reports sent in. Would be fun if we break 1,000 this year. Doesn't matter whether you live in earthquake country or not. This is your disaster preparedness exercise, and September is preparedness month. So by all means, go ahead and participate in that. Again, we've got easy step-by-step instructions. Fill it out. If all you do is send it, did you feel it report? And by the way, we have an exercise option here, which you don't have on the internet, on the official website. This is Winlink exclusive, approved by USGS. So we have that exercise option. The ID will be 2023 shakeout, all one word, 2023 shakeout. All in the instructions on this website that you can find right down here. All right, quick message. We've completely reworked the quick message because one, I think it was too long. There was too many characters allowed in the previous one. And two, we kind of merged the now famous SMS message that Greg created, actually out of it, just demonstrate that you can do that. But we added that. So if you have relatives outside of the area, and you know their phone number and you know their carrier, by all means, go ahead and try sending them an email to SMS. Just keep in mind, you don't want to spam people out there, but give it a try. The carrier works pretty well, but you need to know their carrier beforehand. Maybe a good time to give them a call and ask them about it. I keep asking my sister pretty much every shakeout about it. I know it's AT&T, but it's kind of fun to always ask her because I can see her just roll her eyes. Oh, he forgot again. But the point there is, try it out. It's actually quite a lot of fun. We limited the characters to 140, and there's a character count. There are ways around that, but the point there is, at 165 characters, a lot of the older phones will break up your message. So that's why that limit is there. Again, save your quick message data, makes your life a whole lot easier, and try that out. You can try it out on your own phone. Works really, really well for most of us. After action review. We've completely reworked the after action review to kind of model it on the National Wildfire Coordination Group after action. And we do encourage all of you, as a matter of course, to just go through that, even if it's just in the parking lot after you have an event, after you have a deployment. Ask your people, what was planned? What actually happened? What did happen? And what are we going to do better next time? When I do these for our group, and we do a lot of after action reports, reviews, I usually give everybody a thing where I tell them, tell me one thing that went really well, one thing that we can do better next time, and did you have fun? Those are the three questions I ask everybody. That also makes sure that people who tend to be on the shy side actually tell you what's going on, because very often they have great insights, but for whatever reason, they're not used to speaking up, or they don't want to be. So it's actually nice to just go around, make sure everybody has a chance. And people say, hey, listen, I like the way things work. That's fine. Or they say, hey, listen, I've got so many things to say. Just keep it professional. Make sure this is about actions, not persons. So it should never be personal. It's like, what can we do better? What did we do that wasn't great? Or what did we do that was great? So it's all about actions, not about people. And if you want to, highly recommend scanning the QR code, going to the National Wildfire Coordination Group after action review site, and learn more about that. They have about 6-7 articles on that are really, really great. Any questions about the standard forms? How many of you are asleep? Raise your hands. All right, Dan and John, I don't know, was that just Dully? was that just the glasses, right? All right. Let's talk a little about specialized forms. By the way, we'll show you this in action. That's why I tried to get through this. How to access specialized forms. We're going to change the language on this pretty soon, but specialized forms are useful, fun, and sometimes experimental forms that we are not putting in the standard, that we're not putting into the standard forms folder for a variety of reasons. Again, we've got very specific standards on what we're putting in the standard forms. But we do want to encourage you to go there. Forms not in the Express standard libraries. On the front page, if you go to the fast info, if you go to winlink.org, go to fast info, You can find it here. It's a bullet point, HTML forms, and forms not in Express standard library. Or you can scan the QR code. We make it really easy for you tonight. And that'll take you straight to that website. And you can find these forms there. And those are all in zips. You can download the zip and then extract it to your global folder or your call sign templates folder and access it from there. And if you're interested later, I can show you how to do that. But this is a fun form. How many of you, just show of hands, how many of you know what Summits on the Air and Parks on the Air is? Okay, quite a few. How many of you have done either SODA or PODA? Just show of hands. Okay, quite a few of you. Excellent. So imagine you're out on the summit or in a park. You brought your Winlink setup, but you forgot to spot yourself or you don't have cell phone connection. Now what? Well, thanks to Winlink now, you can spot yourself. How cool is that? And put your name out there and then hopefully make more contacts. And this is a form that was developed by Tony, W1LMS. And so please try this out and let us know how it works for you. Tony's updated it a couple of times. There's a lot of information. You can now also go and view spots and actually see who else is around. So by all means, try this out. Again, download it, unzip to your global folders or your call sign templates folders, global templates or your call sign templates, and you can access it from there. Never extract these into the standard templates folder because every time there's an update, those will be overwritten. So global folder templates or in your call sign folder templates. The other cool form that was developed by Damon N1LJK is the Winlink call sign data, the WM7D's call sign database query. And what you can do is you can enter a call sign. Let's say you're in the field, it's field day, or, you know, Parks on the Air, and you just made a contact and like, hey, he was a nice guy. Let's just find out where he's at. Or, you know, she sounded nice, like a nice person. I wonder whether I got the call sign right. She said she was from Georgia. Let's pop in the call sign and verify the information. You can do that. And it essentially sends an inquiry. And the information you get back, there's a lot more information than this, but I just did a small, snippet here. And it gives you a whole lot of information directly from the ULS. So that's really, really kind of cool. Plus, you have options of searching for last name, first name, city, state, zip code. So it's really fun. We encourage you to download these and play with them. They work really, really well. Let's look ahead a little bit. On September 14th, John, K9ONR, is going to talk about cert forms, and he's going to do a deep dive. I will show you a quick overview of how you can leverage the information from the different forms right now. But if you want to really get the high granularity situational awareness, then I highly recommend John's talk next week. Tune in for that, because they've taken this to a different level. The questions they've answered are, what do we do if we don't have internet on the mapping? I'm a big fan of Google Maps, but Google Maps goes out the window, then what I do? Same thing with Google Earth, and same thing with ArcGIS Online. You can have the offline version. How are you going to do that? And John has answered that with his group. They have really tight integration with GIS, Geographic Information Systems, particularly QGIS. And they've been leveraging volunteer radio operators with Winlink and Walnut Creek CERT for quite a while and feeding information. So if you want to have a real life, actual, application of this, highly recommend CERT forms by John, because it's not just the forms. He just walks you through how easy the forms make it to gather the data, and then how easy Winlink makes it to aggregate the data and send it on. And speaking of aggregation, in California, we have the Red Skies exercise coming up on September 30th, where we're doing something very similar. We're actually aggregating different group data, and we're sending it up to a regional level with a CSV. And we'll talk a little bit when I show you the hands-on. And then on September 21st, I'm pretty sure that's the date, we're doing ICS forms for event and incident planning. And the point there is we want to show you how to use ICS forms to plan your volunteer radio operator events. and how to use ICS forms to plan radio operations as part of a larger incident where you're reporting to maybe a ComL or an OxCom manager, and you're part of a larger operation. And this way you'll have a much easier time understanding where you fit in. And at the same time, we hope we can give you something to practice and kind of adopt best practices as you go forward. Again, there are different ways of doing this. We'll show you the way that we're doing it for things like Baker to Vegas, for all of our exercises, etc., and hopefully give you some information. I also am giving you a little bit of a heads up here. We made the ICS 213 mappable, not because we think it's great to map that information, but because the CSV makes it really easy to kind of see the information flow on the ICS 213 on the agency side, or at least on the Winlink side of things. And if you have 2 hours available, highly recommend that you take the FEMA IS 201 course. It's free, it's online. It'll tell you all you needed to know about forms in ICS. Okay, in lieu of, let's say, the ICS 300 and 400 courses, which usually do forms. All right, do you have any questions on that? Quiet, you're also quiet.
What's the number of that course again?
ICS 201, the IS 201 course, and you can scan the call, you can scan this little QR code here with your phone. I'll take you right to that page.
Thank you.
Sure thing. All right. It's kind of cool. Peter, Nevada County has a whole room full of people. How neat is that? Hey, that's kind of cool. David KK68 was just in Nevada finishing his OxCom task book. So Nevada has been doing a fantastic job on that. All right, let me just show you real quick.
One question.
Go ahead,
is there a specific form you want us to try out tonight with our position, or just anything?
Actually, I would like everybody to fill out here. Let me bring that up again. A Winlink check-in would be the easiest, because that way we can have everybody on one map.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Full screen, Oscar.
Pardon?
Might go full screen on your desktop.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to show something else right now. So I'll just bring this up one more time. So if you haven't filled out your Winlink check-in yet, by all means, use RATPAC, or, you know, if you're Nevada County areas, use that. You know, that's a whole lot of fun. So, alrighty. So that was the, well, I hope it wasn't boring, but the less exciting slide part. Let me show you the specialized forms page. So this is the specialized form page. And you can see we have a whole host of forms on there, including the ARRL forms. California has a couple of forms. Here are the CERT forms, and I really, really want to encourage you to go to this particular page, the CERT page, and download these forms, the CERT 213 general message, the CERT EOC status, and the CERT windshield survey. They all say designed by K9 ONR for next week. And for those of you who like QR codes, we'll just click on here, create a QR code, and you just, I'll take my mouse out of the way. You can just scan that with your phone and pick that up. I think it was enough time. So I strongly encourage you to do that. The other thing you can do, you can go to, we always have a lot of fun forms in the general forms. That is where you can find the SOTA and POTA activating and hunting form, and the WM7D call sign database query we talked about, and some other forms that we kind of took out of the standard library that have been replaced by other forms, right? But we sometimes leave some legacy forms there. Some people like that. So, all right. Any questions about the specialized forms and download? Shall I put that in the chat?
We've
Sure, why not?
That's how all my trouble starts. Sure, why not? Hey, that looks easy. Let's try that. All right. So let's go through this a little bit together, step by step. Are there any questions about forms so far, or can we go into me checking forms, your messages? All right.
Hello,
Yeah, Skip, you have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
I do have a question. Do you hear me clearly?
Yes, yeah, loud and
Good.
clear.
I would like to ask a question generally about forms, but since we're talking, I guess, about the check-in form, that specifically. There are times, for instance, when you're sending a message peer-to-peer, or if you're at a deployed location and you don't have a good connection to an RMS station, it would be helpful to be able to formulate the message perfect by the usual fashion, but then before you send it, delete the forms file. Do that by clicking on the attach, and then it comes down and it says, I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize. But when you click the attach button, it comes down and you would perhaps have the option of deleting the form, the carcass of the form, but you can't because they're totally locked down. Is there a way that these forms could be, you could be able to delete the carcass of the form, in other words, the way it shows up on your web browser, and just send the text, just send the information of the message?
Actually, there is, and it actually depends on the form. So there are some forms where you cannot make any changes after they're submitted, and I think the check-in is one of them. There are a couple of others, like the ICS 213 that was locked. We unlocked that for a couple of reasons, but let's. Oops. No,
Sit rep. Field sit rep.
yeah, that will be an option. So we have a couple where it's locked, so you cannot delete the viewer file, and that depends very often also on the sponsoring agency. Let's put it that way, because sometimes they just don't want that information. Sorry, I need to move you guys out of the way here. All right. So your question is, I've got this attachment here. I want to get rid of it, right?
I don't know whose
So
screen
make it.
there you go. And
Pardon?
just be able to delete the I want to call it the carcass of the form, because as you see, that's 2.7 kilobytes, but the form data itself is only a fraction of that.
Right.
So
And
if you
again,
could
Skip, the answer to that is there's some forms where you simply cannot do that, and there are others where you can. I think the vast majority you actually can. It's just like things like the check-in, check-out. Used to be the ICS 213, but I think you can delete it from those now. But see, right now I can't delete that, and that's just because that's the way the form is designed, right?
Okay. So
and that so if you use a different one here, let's just try one real quick since we're all on this. Let's do an HSA. This is an LA County form. And by the way, people are saying, well, why does LA County need its own form? Well, we've got 190 hospitals in LA County. We'll just fill out one or two of these. Usually I fill them out all, right? And report completed by, we'll just make up some numbers here, right?
And 18 million people.
Yeah, and the greater area. Thank you, Steve. So it's 190 hospitals, 70 of which are 911 receiving hospitals, and a little over 5,000 extended care facilities, and they're all supposed to be managed through the same group. So it's kind of a different size issue there. But here's your question, right? Could I go into this and go to the attachments and then delete? If you see that delete not grayed out here,
correct. Yes, I see.
I most definitely can delete that, and then it'll ask me that, and I go yes, and I still can keep the form data in there. Click on finished, right? Post to outbox. But now, when I click on this, if I want to see if I click on this, right, it'll just open the form data for me.
Right.
right?
So
But that, so it really depends on the form that you're using.
do you see that it's much more efficient to be able to send just the text rather than the entire?
Absolutely, but Skip, here's the downside of doing that, and that's why some forms were locked down. If I go in here, if, let's say I filled it out and I realized what I mentioned earlier, you're putting your finger on something really, really important here. And I've done this before. I've been guilty of that before. I come down here, I'm like, oh, band. No, I was on VHF. I go down here and I want to change this. I change it as to VHF, or I start adding comments to this that I expect the other side to read. If I make those changes there, if the form isn't locked down, you can see I can't make any changes here right now. I can open it up and try and make changes, but it's not, see, no changes or editing of this message is allowed. So I can't add any information here, right? You can hear me type. If you have critical information and you start putting in comments that you think are important, and the other side doesn't look at the message because they're using Winlink, they're only looking at the form you sent, they wouldn't show up in the viewer. Does that make sense? They wouldn't show up in the viewer down here.
Well,
And that's when you start missing critical information, and especially for things like the check-in and check-out, where people very often make these comments and they want to add them afterwards. And it has to do with user interface, because users, and I'm one of them, I'm lazy. If I can make the change in one spot, I'm not going back to load the text file. But this locking down is there to kind of force you to go back and do the right thing. Does that make sense? And your question is absolutely right, but you need to use another form then.
But it doesn't get to my point.
Yeah, I know. How do you make it smaller? The answer is use a simple message. Don't use the form, or use a different form where you can delete it.
Okay, we'll get some hand-
Oliver, there's a way within the Winlink preferences that you can have it not allow you to, under Winlink preferences,
Okay.
under settings, there is a thing that says, which one? One, it says disallow editing or altering message you send. And if you uncheck that, then you'll be allowed to alter the message.
And that is true for forms that aren't locked by default. And the Winlink check-in and check-out are locked by default. They're
or text
locked on the form level.
Yeah, forms can override that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So this would actually then implement the same policy on all your forms and everything you create.
Oliver.
Yeah.
An example, every month in Region 4, the states send a field sit rep report to the FEMA Watch, which is an email address. Sometimes they send it to both radio and email. But if it only goes to an email address and you have a very tight system where security is a big deal, there's an option, and I don't remember where it is, that I can click on and only put the text field situation report through without having the attached files on the bottom that might hold it up.
Yeah.
Okay, Greg, you got your hand up. If you have your camera, can you turn your camera on and come on and talk to us? You're muted, Greg.
Now is it working?
It is.
Okay. For the fellow that wanted to send the P2P and get rid of the body or the XML, what you can do is create your form in Winlink, then just copy the text of the message, create a new message, address it the way you want, and paste that text in. It's a workaround.
Yep, this is Skip, and shoot. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I get that, but it's extra workload to do that. It would be way more simple if we could just get rid of that.
Well, it's one of those.
So is there a way, well, let me ask this, is there a way to lock down all the information except the ability to delete the, I keep calling it the carcass, and that's a derogatory term, and I apologize for it, but it's the best one I can come up with right now. Lock down everything except the ability to delete that XML form.
Yeah, no. There isn't. That's the short answer.
And it's a good one. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Fair enough. No, I'm just, I mean, if it's really an issue, there is actually a way where you can take a form and move it to your global folders and then change it so it isn't locked down. But understand that if you do that, any subsequent updates will not have that, and you'll have to rename the form. So you can have a local version of that. If it's really important to you, we can help you with that. But again, you're kind of missing out on a lot of the future updates then, just FYI. All right. Any other question before we go on here?
Yes, we have more hands up here.
All right.
Gene, I'll catch you in a second. Dan, California Dan, go ahead and take it.
And my question is for Skip. Skip, are you talking about removing the traditional structure of the form for initial use or for post-processing and forwarding?
Well,
Because
I would,
go ahead.
what I would like to do is be able to use the entire form for creating the message, but then delete the carcass again, so that the form, all the form data is there and in the correct order and so on, but it will transmit much more effectively, much more efficiently. If you're not sending that.
It was on the screen as you were talking about it. I don't know who's controlling that, but hit something and show what on the little blobs, show Skip what comes up from the form.
No. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about deleting the XML because that's the largest part of the file. And we discussed that at the very beginning when we had that when we made that decision for forms to be locked down. And that was when Mike was still with us. So but the point there isn't an easy way of doing other than you taking the form that you want to do that without and taking out the lines that lock it down, and then understanding that the future updates, then the standard library won't be reflected. It'll be a manual process. So that short answer is no. All right.
Okay, we've got 3 more people with hands up. You want to take it? Or wait.
All right. And I still want to show a couple of things. So Gene, I'll just go by the way you guys are on my screen. Gene, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Great presentation. My question is about CERT. If a CERT member is not also a ham radio operator, how do they get authorized access to Winlink?
They don't. That's the short answer of this. Again, if they're not a ham, then the only way they can do that is manually. And I think John, K9ONR is going to talk about that in detail next week, because that's a situation that they have quite often because many of the CERT members aren't hams.
Or
Oliver, shares is one option.
Yeah, again, that would be an option if the agency supports it. So yeah, I mean, but the short answer is they don't if they're not a ham or a share station for that matter, because those are the only 2 ways you get access to Winlink.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Sure thing, Gene. Great question. And again, ask John next week how they do that, because they deal with that all the time. So I'm sure they worked out a great system in.
Okay, let's take one more.
All right, I will do. I wrote it down.
Let's take one more. And John, go ahead, and then we'll get back to the program.
Paul?
Paul, yeah. I'm sorry, Paul.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if this will help the fellow who was asking about sending just the information and not the whole framework of the thing. Some of the forms I filled out, people would fill out all the little boxes, and then the form that was created would take the information in those boxes and put it exactly in the apple pie order that the receiver wants, and then he cuts and pastes it into a database. I don't know if that kind of thing would work. That might help him.
Great suggestion. Thank you, Paul. Alrighty. Let's get back to setting filters. In this case, we had about half of you sending in Winlink check-ins, and I just want to kind of combine with what Phil talked about last week. In organization, I chose to enter RATPAC, and I chose to not filter out all the others. I just chose to say, highlight everybody with RATPAC in it in orange, right? And then click save. And now everybody who put RATPAC in their organization is now highlighted, and I can look at the information they send. And that makes it a whole lot of fun to actually play with that. Because now I also see people, let's say here, Herbert, who didn't put in RATPAC, and we can actually look at the organization he put in, South Texas, Aries. That gives us a great overview, especially in a situation where you're dealing with multiple organizations responding to the same. Remember that interoperability we talked about, that help, the mutual aid that we talked about earlier. That gives you a great overview of what's going on. Also understand we can actually do multiple filters. So if we wanted to, let's see where the comments here, we can say, who mentions earth, if I can type, earthquake, right? And then we'll use white as the color, and we'll go save. And I'm not doing this right. But the point there is we can actually filter for multiple items here, right? Let's just see. Earthquake. Let's make those yellow. There you go. And just have fun with that. And we really, really, really want to encourage all of you. Here are our friends, right? Earthquake and RATPAC. They've experienced both. So you can have multiple, you can have multiple options in this. Understand that this is a field version. You can see here, and we've got in yellow all the people who've experienced earthquakes, but don't have RATPAC. So just understand that we have lots of options here to do that. But this is the field version. It gives you, the operator in Winlink, a great overview. But what happens when you want to take that information outside of Winlink and you want to run additional analyses on this, right? Well, there's a solution for that. In this case, we select the Winlink check-in version 5. We go and we generate the CSV file. As you can see, I already set it, comma, delimited. I like year, month, day. That's just me. And I already limited the start date and time to today at 3 o'clock local time. And I told it to generate a new CSV file when reports are received. So when I received all your reports, it started adding it to this spreadsheet that I defined beforehand. You can, of course, go into and click on Browse. Just give it a smart name. I recommend the year, day, time. So use the same format that you use up here. Maybe even the time here, and then give it a good name and incident name. I find that super helpful. In this case, we're already running this. So in the background, we could have hit generate. It would have generated the information, but it should already have done that. Let me just bring up that file. Live. They say you should never do this stuff live, but if things don't go wrong, it's not really ham radio, is it? So in this case, let's go to documents. In my case, ham radio. And we go to Winlink. And the nice thing about doing it this way is we can just go to the date. Winlink check-in RATPAC, right? CSV, we double click on that. Hold on 1 sec, get that out of the way. It should open up in here with any. By the way, this is an example while we're waiting for the other information to be pulled up. This is the bed availability report as a spreadsheet. And that works really, really well. Just understand you can do the same thing. You can have a drop down here as well. Change the service level if you need to. So there are lots and lots of options, and I just clicked away. So here's information. These are your check-ins that you send. And I just want to show you, because remember we had the Winlink message window to CSV to mapping, and I just want to show you this process. Especially the people who are involved in Red Skies will really appreciate that. I see Dan going, wait, what's he doing? So here's all the information that you guys send. Remember, we had about 30 reports coming in. And these are all your reports. They're listed in a beautiful spreadsheet. And that took, Greg has the patience of an angel. This took the most time, getting it all in an order that makes it easy to work with. So starting at 0A, you've got the organization, so you can actually take a really good look at what's going on there. You can see where stations are located. You can search it, you can use it. You've got the latitude, longitude, military grid system, or UTM. And here you've got the comments. You can check all this information. Hurricane, earthquake, ice, and high winds. That sounds like a whole lot of disasters waiting, so thank you so much for sharing that. But now you have that information in a CSV file. And what can you do with that? Well, let's say you're a ham, right? And you don't have access to ArcGIS, or like John is going to show you next week, QGIS. Well, you can go to Google My Maps, right? And we can call this the RATPAC map, right? Just where RATPAC, we can give you a description. And we can go to untitled layer, and we can go to import. And then we go back to our file here. Whoops, go back to our file here, and let me just move this up. And I'll just show you how easy this is. We'll grab this file, we left mouse click and hold, don't blink. And when it turns blue, we know we can release. And now it asks us latitude, longitude. Well, we've already got the defined. We can define the latitude, longitude. I also want to point out here that we've got latitude, longitude twice here. So let's go with the other latitude, longitude that we've got down here. Latitude. Just to show you, because that's the entered latitude, longitude. So we'd always use the numbered version on this, just to be on the safe side. It doesn't really matter that the form takes it on, but okay, latitude, longitude. We're going to continue. And then we can say we want to see who it is from. And through the magic of the internet, and every single one of you can do this, okay? You do not have to be a programmer. You do not have to be, hey, look, there's our friend Finn right up there. And we get all the information that he sent through the report, the same information, C1, A, B. Do you understand why this was so important for us to get this listing right? Because now you can run queries on this if you add this to, let's say, Google Sheets. So it's going to, it makes your life a lot easier. Okay, I'll give you a bonus to this. Right now, we've got a uniform style, right? On this. What happens if we group places, let's say, by, I don't know, band? And just like that, it's changing what band it is. We can label it by from, or we could label it by band, or anything else we want to, right? So in this case, we can close it. It gives us this nice list. So we had 14 of our 32 check-ins by Telnet, 11 not available, we don't know, HF, VHF, and UHF, and VHF. How cool is that? Just like that. Do we want to change it to something else? Sure. Do which service? How many have we had? We want to list them by, let's say, initial operator. So we've got 29 amateur and 2 shares. and we can click on that. And yes, if you want to really get into this, you can actually say, okay, the amateurs are the cocktail glasses, and we'll make them in fun orange. And then, you know, if you want to, we can do the others in, I don't know, with a star, and let's say in purple and with a star. And that way we know that the share stations, and that's Phil and that's Greg, and then everybody else is having cocktails at this hour. Does that make sense? And just like that, you've taken Winlink information. You have a map that you created, and that can show anybody. Again, this is internet dependent. Hey, if you have a Starlink connection, more power to you, right? But the point here is you can create this. And if you want to see how this is done on an internet independent version, join John's talk next week, and he'll show you how to do that with QGIS on a totally different level. So it's a whole lot of fun. And that actually shows all I wanted to show. Do any of you have any questions, anything we haven't covered? Are your heads smoking? Was this too much, too little? How are you feeling?
One question.
Yeah, go ahead.
From the very main screen, what's the first thing we click on? Like, I'm in the parking lot and I heard turn right, but actually I got to turn left going out of the parking lot and then immediately take a right turn. So what's the very first thing from the main screen I click to get into that?
To get into the mapping?
Yes.
Messages.
Okay. Yeah, you can either click on the little globe here, the form map and CSV file, or you can go message generate maps and CSV files for forms. Both of them will get you to the same point.
Okay, thanks. That was the biggest question I had.
Yeah, you know, if you missed it, other people missed it, so thanks for asking. And again, you have tons of options here. We're not going to go into the details of this, but this is just a quick overview of the magic of forms and the updates we've done. Understand whether forms have all been updated. We've updated the Higgs forms. There are now quite a few forms that have this is an exercise as an option. I'll show you that real quick before we wrap up. And are there any other questions before we wrap this up? So quite a few of our forms now have this. This is an exercise. You can click on that and it'll enter. This is an exercise in the text and in the viewer. And if you don't have that, the viewer won't even see the difference. All right.
Oliver, you might mention about how you can put your favorite forms on the message composition screen.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thank you, Phil. Gene, you have a question while we do that?
Yes. One last question for the night. Is there a training program or simulation that one can use going from beginning to end when it comes to filling out forms, basic composition of entering a Winlink message without actually going through a network, whether it be online or through radio, that somebody can use to practice putting these things together? And then once that practice is done, it can like mistakes you made or whatever like that.
Oh, you mean like a feedback version? I mean, the Wave Talkers, the first 4 videos, they're going to great detail about how to get into this very, you know, like step by step by step. But there isn't a way where it's kind of a feedback based kind of online training, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I was like thinking about like a simulator that helps you practice, gives you feedback, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's just on your desktop or laptop, whatever the case might be, that helps you along in proficiency in doing anything and everything at Winlink.
There isn't a simulator, but I'll show you a little trick. Let me show you real quick how to set the favorite templates, and I'll show you a little trick on how you can actually do that in a kind of a safe environment on your own. How about that? So
that sounds great.
If you set and thanks for the question, Gene. If you want to set your favorite templates, and you saw the 4 that I had set in my new messages, you can go to message and then set favorite templates. And then you can just click on browse and go into your CRMS standard templates and just select which one is your favorite template. And I like to keep my names short because that makes life a whole lot easier than if you have very long. For me, it's usually the Winlink check-in, the HSA, which is our bed availability, the resource request, which is specific for LA County, and the Did You Feel It report. And by the way, when we had the last earthquake here in Los Angeles, and I don't know whether some of you heard that on the news, but those not living in California, we had a hurricane and an earthquake at the same time. Now, I don't know whether that makes us super cool or just super crazy, but the point is, it was an experience.
Both.
But, and then once you have that set, so enter your display name, select the text file. That's the important part. You want to select the text files on all of these, right? Not the HTML, the text files, and then click on save. And then when you click on the form up here on the new message, you have those options. Remember, in HSA, RR, did you feel it? And if I want to fill out, let's say, an HSA, and that brings us back to Gene's question. Let's say I want to try this form out, and I don't know anything about that, and I want to do that in a safe environment. Just fill it out. I'm going to do a whole other thing here. And yes, all of these names are made up for exercises. Right, in this case, we have additional information you can enter. Well, let's do submit, click OK, close this, minimize that. And here's the trick, Gene. Send it to test. And what that does, it sends it to the Winlink system and then bounces it back to you. So you're not bothering anybody. It's a totally safe environment, but you also know your message is going out and you can see what it does when it comes back. So I can go post to Outbox now, right? We've got one message, one message in our Outbox. We still have our session running here. Oops, where is it? Show yourself, coward. And then we click start. My great grandmother used to say that. Especially when she opened cans of jam and the jam wouldn't open. She's like, come out, cowards. More messages. Cool. More check-ins. Maybe I can demonstrate something else there. All right, so we received another 9 check-ins, and you can see our message has been sent. Let me show you this real quick, because remember how we checked add the information to our form. So we got the Winlink check-in for the RATPAC. Let's just open that up and see whether it added those 9 forms. So remember we had 31 before. Now we should have what, 40, right? If it ever opens this. Give it a second here, it's still thinking. Meantime, we'll just start this and let's see whether the test is coming back. See how we get this message back? Service, winlink.org test message, download the checked message. And let's check that. Oh, it opened, but it opened on the wrong screen here. So let's see, did we get 40 on this? Look at that, we got 40. So everybody who just sent their message is listed here. And what does that mean? Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's first do Gene's question. Answer Gene's question. So let's go up to this up here, and you see how we've got this option here, service, and it says the following message was received by a Winlink test message reflector. All that information, and the information is right back. All right. So that's
that looks great.
Excellent. And that's a very safe way of doing that and playing with it, and you can't really break anything with this. All right, I'll show you one more thing and then we'll wrap up for tonight. Okay, so we have this information here, right? We know we have 9 new reports. What do we do? What do we do, hotshots? We'll add those. And is that a complicated process? No, we can just go re-import and merge, and we can replace all the items. We go back to our documents in Ham Radio. And I know Finn is thinking, holy smokes, he's got a thing on Sweden in there. And that's my Swedish recipes, by the way. I made pancakes for breakfast. All right, and remember how we did that? Winlink check-in RATPAC, that was the file name we gave it. We'll drag it in. Remember, we added these. I didn't have to click on anything. And just like that, we've got now see our 39 reports are listed in here. Just like that. Was absolutely zero effort. If you're doing a cool thing like ArcGIS or QGIS, like John is going to show you next week, it'll actually monitor the file and you don't have to do anything. It'll just, Winlink will send information to CSV and QGIS will read it from the CSV like every minute. All right. All right. And I hope that was fun and kind of a little bit amazing and you had a good time. And, you know, I mean, this isn't a course on Google Maps, but I just wanted to show you that all of you have this at your fingertips. And I do want to really encourage you to feel empowered to try this. This is one of those great things that we can do. And I do want to say thank you so much, Dan, for inviting us Winlinkers, but you know, me for tonight. And I look forward to hearing John's presentation. I think Phil set us up for success there last week, and so we're looking forward to that. Thank you.